Hi folks, Doc here. Welcome to episode number 4 of Doc's Dirtcheap DIY. In this series so far, I've shown you cheap or free tips, tricks, techniques, primarily for your lawn and garden tractors at this point, and I'm kind of okay with that, and we're probably going to continue with that trend. In the meantime, today we're addressing your braking system. So stick around, show you what I got. Alrighty, so what we're going to address today is the brake pads. Typically, the Peerless 600, 700, 800, 900, MST series, that includes, by the way, the 820s, and a lot of the Foot Spicer models are the same too. And what you have are these little brake pads. Hold on, got one right here. They're about yay big, and after a while, of course, like any brake pad, they wear out. Now, you can go online and order new brake pads, and frankly, they don't cost altogether that much. But sometimes it's a matter of convenience. Well, crap, I've got my brakes apart today, and I'd like to put pads in today. Or maybe you really are hard up for cash at the moment, or you don't have a credit card, so ordering online is difficult for you. And I'm here to show you how you can replace your brake pads absolutely free. And all you need is a hacksaw and a scribe or some kind of fine point marker or even a pencil. A chisel is helpful, and not a heck of a lot else except for an automotive brake pad. Now, it doesn't have to be a new one. It could be a used one. I have a new one for this purpose. I was fortunate to be given a set of pads for an application I simply don't have for exactly this purpose. So a couple of weeks ago, I did it for the first time. Admittedly, I've been meaning to try this for a long time, and it worked out quite well. I put the new pads in Fugazi, and it stops as it's supposed to. I think it actually stops better than it did before. So I have a brand new brake pad for this. You can use a used brake pad. It absolutely doesn't matter as long as it's got at least about 1/4 of an inch of material on it. Probably 1/4 to 5/16 is just about that sweet zone to replace one of these more or less as brand new. Any thicker than that, you'll actually have to thin it down, which is okay. I'll show you how to do that. Any thinner than that, and I mean, yeah, okay, you're going to have brakes, but you're not going to have a lot of life in them, and you'll find yourself doing this again before very long. If you do decide to go out and get a set of brake pads for an 81 Chevette or something like that, they're probably going to cost you, you know, 15 bucks, 20 bucks, and you've got enough material there to make brakes for your mowers for a very long time. So, let me get myself in a position here, and I'll show you exactly how to do it. Okay, so here I'm just going to go over what you need. No particular order. I've got a hacksaw here with just a kind of nondescript metal cutting blade on it. This one's 24 teeth per inch. I don't think it matters that much as long as it's a half-decent blade with some material on it. Depending on the brake pad material you choose, some are metallic and semi-metallic, a metal cutting blade is probably your better option. I have a scribe here, and this is just to trace the outline of the brake pad onto our donor material for cutting it out. And I have a brand new brake pad here. Now this one here, like I said, is absolutely brand new, and this material actually is too thick, but we'll go over that when I reach that point. I've got a bench vise here. This is most easily done with a vise. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and chuck that into the vise in a way that we can get the hacksaw in there and do what we got to do, cut what we got to cut, and life is good. Now at the same time, we have what we're going to call our old brake pad here. This one actually has some life left in it, but for the purpose of this demonstration, this is a good template. You can actually also use the little backing plate that goes between the actuator pins and the brake pad in your caliper. And I can probably show you that afterwards. But in the meantime, I've got my little pad here. And you probably also might find yourself in need of a chisel or a flathead screwdriver. But I'll show you that in a minute. In the meantime, all I'm going to do is I'm going to avoid the rivet holes. Bonded pads don't have rivets, by the way. This is a riveted pad. And without getting overly fancy and caring too much about what's where and how, I'm just going to go ahead lay the pad down on the donor and just scribe the shape so it's there. I'll just pop this out for a quick second and see if the camera will catch that. You can see I've just got an outline. I've got this edge here, and that doesn't matter too much. So I'm going to chuck this back into the vise in a way that I can get the hacksaw in there as much as possible. Tighten that down. Now, for the sake of having all my I's dotted, my T's crossed, I'm going to point out here that sometimes you don't know what kind of material you're dealing with. You should wear a basic particle respirator at least. Brake dust is one of those things where it could be relatively harmless, if not slightly irritating, all the way down to containing asbestos and could wind up killing you with mesothelioma. So you really should wear some sort of respiratory protection for this. For the purpose of this video, I'm cutting one, and you wouldn't be able to understand me if I had right? Right. Okay, so just going to go ahead, get in there with the hacksaw. And it actually cuts pretty easily. Okay, so once you've cut through both sides, you don't want to have to make a long cut all the way across all this material. So you're just going to take a hammer and a screwdriver or a chisel, wedge it in, give it a knock it out. So then, you can see where your line is. I don't know if it's going to show up on camera. If it doesn't, I apologize, because it's a finely scribed line. But we're going to take it out of the vise and chuck it back in such that we can cut the pad for length. And again with the hacksaw. And again, this doesn't take long and it doesn't take a ton of effort. There you go. That quick and easy. There's your pad. Now, as I indicated before, these new pads are actually too thick. So I'm not going to go through the process of filming it. But basically, all you would need to do at that point is chuck it in your vise again. You know, relatively carefully. You don't want to crush the new pad. And just take it down to something a little closer to somewhere between 1/4 and 5/16. Okay, so with that done, my pad is now somewhere between 1/4 and 5/16 thick. I didn't bother measuring this because I've done this a couple times now, and you know, my eyeball is sufficient. You might want to measure. This could stand to be a little bit thicker, but too thick is a bit of a problem. If it's a little bit thinner, you can adjust it out. If it's too thick, your caliper might not bolt exactly all the way tight to the transaxle, and that's going to be a problem. So I have a rusty, stupid caliper here that is not in use. In fact, I think it sees solid, but that's okay, because I just need to show you that the pad needs to be able to just drop in there and not hang up. So you can see I've got a little bit of free play in there, so that's good. So all you got to do is do that twice. You can see by the amount of material that I took out of this to make one, you know, if you plot your pieces carefully, you should be able to get several out of a regular automotive brake pad. If it's the bonded type, not the riveted type, and you don't have to try and avoid the rivets, you can get even more out of it. Again, it does not have to be a new pad. Hell, most auto shops, you know, will change brake pads, and invariably, there's always one on the car where the caliper was a little sticky or something, and you know, there's a fair bit of meat left on it, and you could probably just hit up your local auto shop and say, hey, have you got any brake pads with 1/4 of an inch material on it? I don't even care what the application is, and they're pretty much guaranteed to say, here, have a nice day. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed my little how-to on making your own mower brake pads for free. It literally is that simple. A couple points: you might be able to get away with using a power tool for cutting this, such as a grinder or a sawzall or something like that. Your precision is going to be based solely upon your skill. The dust is going to fly a lot harder, and once again, some sort of respiratory protection would definitely be a good idea. If when you cut it out, and I forgot to mention this earlier, it's a little bit, you know, too wide or too long and it doesn't move freely in the caliper, you can just put a piece of coarse grit sandpaper on the table and just shave it down a little bit. No big deal there. And as you can see, it cuts fairly easy depending on the material. This stuff here was actually a little bit tougher than some other ones I've played with because this is a semi-metallic brake pad, so it's got metal in it, which means it tends to have a longer life at the expense of potentially being a little harder on the rotor. If you're using an organic brake pad, it's going to cut even easier. But always use a little bit of respiratory protection, and like I said, if you've cut it a little bit large, you can file it down easily enough with a file or some sandpaper down on the table. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this particular episode of Doc's Dirtcheap DIY, and I thank you for tuning in and subscribing and sharing the videos. And I invite you to check out the Sprocket's Garage Facebook group and hit up Sulphur City Design to feed your adhesive addiction and get your Sprocket swag. Until next time, take care of yourself. My fridge is making funny noises.